The skies over New Washington burned crimson that morning. Not from sunrise, that gentle daily ritual had become a luxury of the past, but from the atmosphere-piercing lasers of the Martian Armada. Commander Alex Chen watched from the cracked window of Earth Defense Headquarters as another building collapsed in the distance, sending plumes of dust into the already hazy air. 6 months since the first Martian ships appeared in orbit. 6 months of humanity learning what it meant to be the underdogs in a war they never asked for. "Status report," Alex demanded, turning away from the window. The command center buzzed with the controlled chaos of humanity's last stand. Lieutenant Rivera's fingers danced across her console, pulling up holographic displays of Earth's remaining defense systems. The London shield is holding at 32% capacity. Tokyo's completely dark. The Brazilian defense grid is online but reporting heavy damage to their southern quadrant. Alex nodded, the weight of command etched into the lines of a face that had aged a decade in half a year. "And what about Project Phoenix?" The room fell silent. Even the constant chatter of communications officers and tactical analysts paused at the mention of humanity's last hope. "Dr. Patel reports they're ready for the final test," Rivera said, her voice dropping to just above a whisper, as if the Martian surveillance systems might be listening. When they first appeared above Earth's major cities, the Martian ships came bearing what seemed like friendship. Their technology was centuries beyond what humanity had achieved, sleek, silver vessels that defied physics as we understood it, with weapons that could level mountains or pinpoint a single human with terrifying precision. Their ambassadors spoke of cultural exchange, of sharing knowledge that it took exactly 12 days for their true intentions to surface. The first attack hit Shanghai. By the time the world understood what was happening, 15 major cities had been reduced to rubble. The pattern became clear. The Martians weren't interested in Earth's resources or land. They wanted the planet emptied of human life. What the Martians hadn't counted on was humanity's stubborn refusal to go quietly into extinction. "Commander," a voice called from across the room. Captain Jack Thompson, formerly of the British Royal Air Force and now Earth's most decorated pilot in the counteroffensive, approached with a tablet in hand. "You need to see this." The tablet showed footage from one of their few remaining orbital satellites. A massive Martian vessel, easily 3 times the size of their standard warships, was slowly positioning itself in high orbit. "Intelligence thinks it's their command ship," Jack explained, his voice tight. "The Martians call it the Harbinger. Our deep cover operatives on their forward base on Phobos suggest it carries their supreme military commander." Alex's jaw clenched. "So they're finally bringing out the big guns." "There's more," Jack said. "Look at these energy readings." He swiped to a different screen showing a series of pulsing data patterns. "They're charging something massive. The math suggests it could affect our entire hemisphere in one blast." The command center felt suddenly colder. They'd seen what Martian weapons could do to a city. The thought of a weapon that could take out half the planet in one shot was almost too terrible to contemplate. Dr. Patel chose that moment to enter the room, her lab coat rumpled from days without rest. Her eyes, however, blazed with the fire of breakthrough. "It works," she said simply, holding up a small device that pulsed with a blue light. "Project Phoenix is operational." Hope, that rarest of commodities in this war, flickered across the faces of everyone in the command center. Project Phoenix had started as a desperate theory. The Martians' technology was based on principles humans were only beginning to understand, manipulating quantum fields in ways that seemed like magic. But Dr. Patel and her team had noticed something crucial during the early days of the invasion: microscopic fluctuations in the Martian shields whenever they passed through Earth's magnetic field. What had begun as an observation had evolved into humanity's one shot at survival, a device that could amplify those fluctuations, potentially creating catastrophic failures in Martian tech. The problem was, to deploy it effectively would require getting close to the Martian command ship, a suicide mission by any calculation. Alex looked from the small device to the satellite image of the massive Martian warship, then to the faces of humanity's last defenders gathered in this bunker. "How soon can we launch?" Alex asked. Jack stepped forward, shoulders squared. "The Archangels are fueled and ready. Just give the word." The Archangels, Earth's ultimate fighter squadron, cobbled together from the best remaining technology and piloted by the finest surviving pilots. Modified for space combat, enhanced with salvaged Martian tech, they represented everything humans did best: adapt, improvise, and overcome. Alex took one last look at the burning horizon before turning to face the room. Send the alert. All remaining Earth forces to battle stations. The Archangels launch in 3 hours. Nobody said what they were all thinking. This was humanity's final play. If Project Phoenix failed, there wouldn't be another chance. Outside, the red skies darkened further as more Martian ships descended through the atmosphere. The final siege was beginning. The underground hangar that housed the Archangels thrummed with activity. Massive overhead lights cast harsh shadows across the sleek, angular bodies of Earth's final defense squadron. There were 12 ships in total, each one a hybrid of human engineering and reverse-engineered Martian technology. They didn't match the elegant, almost organic curves of the alien vessels, but they carried something the Martians couldn't comprehend: the desperate ingenuity of a species fighting for survival. Jack inspected his ship, running calloused fingers along the reinforced hull. The Archangel Mark 7 was a far cry from the Royal Air Force fighters he'd flown before the invasion. Its skin was embedded with adaptive camouflage panels that could absorb certain frequencies of Martian scanning tech. The weapon systems were a hodgepodge of conventional missiles and experimental energy weapons based on captured Martian tech. "She'll hold together," came a voice from behind him. Maya Rodriguez, Earth Defense Forces chief engineer, approached with a tablet displaying the ship's diagnostics. "Not pretty, but she'll get you there." Jack managed a tight smile. "That's all I need. How's the integration with Patel's device?" Maya's expression shifted slightly. "It's complicated. We've never tried to interface our tech with something that fundamentally alters quantum fields. The simulations show a 64% chance of success." "Better odds than I expected," Jack replied, the gallows humor that had become common among Earth's defenders slipping into his voice. Across the hangar, Alex was conferring with Dr. Patel and a group of pilots. The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. While the main Earth Defense Forces engaged the Martian fleet in a diversionary attack, the Archangels would slip through the chaos, make their way to the Harbinger, and deploy Project Phoenix directly against the Martian command ship's shields. "Remember," Dr. Patel was saying, her voice steady despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes, "the device needs to be within half a kilometer of their main shield generator to work. Any farther and the effect dissipates too quickly." "Which means we need to get close enough to spit on them," muttered Lieutenant Kira Chen, no relation to the commander but equally determined. At 28, she was the youngest Archangel pilot, a former civilian drone racing champion whose spatial awareness had proven invaluable in dogfights against the faster Martian ships. The briefing continued, with holographic displays showing the approach vectors and contingency plans. What went unsaid was that this mission had been planned with no extraction protocol. The math simply didn't support it. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the hangar, Rivera was making a final recording on her personal device. "Mom, if you get this..." She paused, searching for words that wouldn't come. "How do you compress a lifetime of love and regret into a few stolen moments?" "I'm okay. We're going to fix this. Remember what you always told me about standing up to bullies?" She smiled sadly at the memory. "Turns out it works for alien invaders too." The invasion had come just 2 years after humanity had established its first permanent Mars colony. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Humans had barely set foot on the red planet when the Martians arrived. Of course, they weren't actually from Mars. Intelligence suggested they originated from somewhere beyond Neptune's orbit, perhaps from one of the distant dwarf planets or even beyond the solar system entirely. They'd merely used Mars as a staging ground, quickly overwhelming the small human outpost there before turning their sights to the blue planet. Dr. Patel had been on Mars when they first arrived. One of the few survivors who managed to smuggle herself aboard a Martian transport, she'd brought back crucial information about their technology. Her expertise in quantum physics and her first-hand observations had been the foundation of Project Phoenix. 3 hours to launch, announced the overhead speakers, the computerized voice oddly calm amidst the mounting tension. Alex finished the briefing and found a moment of solitude near one of the auxiliary control panels. The commander pulled out a worn photograph, a family vacation at Lake Michigan, taken just months before the invasion. Two smiling faces looked back, Alex's spouse and their 10-year-old daughter. They'd been in Chicago when the third wave hit. Now they existed only in memory and in this creased photograph. Jack approached quietly, respecting the moment before speaking. The pilots are ready. They know what's at stake. Alex nodded, carefully tucking the photo away. And the new intel from the Australian bunker? Confirmed. The Harbinger is carrying their supreme commander, someone they call the Overseer. Apparently, there's been dissent among the Martian ranks. Some of their commanders question the ethical dimensions of wiping out an entire species. A bitter laugh escaped Alex's lips. Apparently not enough dissent to stop them. No, Jack agreed, but enough that the Overseer felt compelled to personally oversee this final assault. It makes them vulnerable. They've concentrated their command structure. Around them, pilots were saying quiet goodbyes, technicians were running final checks, and medical staff were preparing for casualties they knew would be overwhelming. Despite everything, there was a strange calm settling over the hangar, the calm of people who had accepted the gravity of their mission and their likely fate. High above them, beyond the reinforced bunker ceiling, beyond the ruined city streets, the red sky darkened further as more Martian ships entered the atmosphere. The Harbinger itself remained in high orbit, charging its hemisphere killer weapon with agonizing patience. The final countdown to humanity's last stand had begun. The launch bay doors groaned open, revealing a sky split between Earth's natural blue and the artificial crimson cast by Martian engines. One by one, the 12 archangels rose on columns of blue flame, their hulls gleaming briefly in the strange light before their adaptive camouflage activated. To any watching eyes, human or Martian, they would now appear as little more than atmospheric distortions, visible only when moving too quickly. Archangel Squadron, maintain comms discipline. Jack's voice cut through the secure channel. Remember, we stay dark until we hit the stratosphere. Martian detection grid is thickest at 20,000 feet. 12 acknowledgement lights blinked on his heads-up display. No voices, words were precious now, and potentially dangerous. The Martians had shown an uncanny ability to intercept and decode human communications. Back at Earth Defense Headquarters, Alex stood before the main tactical display, watching 12 faint signatures ascend toward the clouds. The room felt impossibly tense, every breath measured, every movement careful, as if excess noise might somehow alert the enemy to their plan. Diversion forces report ready, Commander, Rivera said softly. Australian grid is online. European defense batteries charged. African drone swarms activated. Alex nodded. Tell them to wait for my mark. There would be only one chance to coordinate the global counterstrike. Timing was everything. Dr. Patel stood slightly apart from the tactical officers, her focus entirely on a specialized display showing quantum field readings. The Project Phoenix device was now completely activated, its unique signature masked within the Archangel's already minimal electronic footprint. The science behind it had consumed 3 years of her life before the invasion and 6 desperate months since. Now everything rode on whether her theories about Martian shield technology were correct. Above the clouds, the Archangels broke formation, spreading out to minimize detection risk. Lieutenant Kira Chen, piloting Archangel 7, felt her heart hammering against her ribs as her ship punched through the stratosphere. The sky above darkened to indigo, then to the star-speckled black of near space. Her sensors began to pick up Martian vessels, dozens of them, forming a protective cordon around the Harbinger. The massive command ship hung in low orbit like an obsidian dagger pointed at Earth's heart. Targets acquired, came Jack's hushed voice over the secure channel. Switching to Phase 2 protocols. At that signal, the global diversion began. Across 6 continents, humanity's remaining defense systems roared to life. Missile batteries emptied their reserves into the sky. EMP generators pulsed massive electromagnetic disruptions. Drone swarms darkened the skies over major Martian landing zones. Even civilian power grids were purposely overloaded, creating massive Ergi signatures to confuse Martian sensors. The effect was immediate. Martian vessels broke their holding patterns, scattering to engage the multi-pronged assault. Alarms blared across their network, their distinctive three-tone warning call audible even through the vacuum of space as it was transmitted on emergency frequencies. "They've taken the bait," Maya confirmed from her monitoring station at headquarters. 92% of perimeter vessels are repositioning. But the Harbinger remained unmoved, its massive bulk still gathering energy for the hemisphere-killing strike. Around it, a dozen elite Martian warships maintained their protective formation. The Archangels accelerated, their modified engines pushing well beyond safety tolerances. Inside her cockpit, Kira felt the vibrations that suggested her ship might tear itself apart before any Martian weapon could touch it. The mission parameters accepted this risk. Better to burn out approaching the target than to arrive too late. "Archangel 3, they've spotted me," came a tense voice over the comm. It was Rodriguez, one of their best pilots. Taking evasive action. On the tactical displays, Rodriguez's ship veered sharply as two Martian interceptors broke from the Harbinger's defense ring to pursue. His maneuvers were textbook perfect, the kind of flying that had earned him 3 kills during the Battle of Seoul. But the Martian ships were faster, their weapons more precise. A flash of light. "Rodriguez is gone," Jack announced, his voice flat with the effort of containing emotion. "Maintain course." 11 ships remained at IN Earth Defense Headquarters. Alex watched as Rodriguez's signal vanished from the tactical display. One more name for the memorial wall, if anyone survived to build it. There was no time to mourn, not now. Status on the Harbinger's weapon? "Energy buildup at 83%, a technician replied. "Estimated time to firing capability, 12 minutes. Dr. Patel looked up sharply. "That's sooner than we calculated. They must have improved their charging sequence." 12 minutes. The Archangels needed at least 15 to reach optimal deployment range. "Can we push the diversion harder?" Alex asked. "Draw more of their defense ring away?" Rivera shook her head. "We're already at maximum commitment. There's nothing left to throw at them." In space, the Archangels accelerated harder, their engines glowing white-hot with strain. Another Martian interceptor broke formation, then another. The defense ring was thinning, but not quickly enough. "They've locked onto 3 more of us," Jack reported as warning signals flashed across his console. "Yamato Okafor, break on my mark to Vector 7. The rest continue on approach vector." "Negative," Kira responded immediately. "I'm carrying one of the primary Phoenix modules. I need to stay on course." Before Jack could argue, Yamato cut in. "I'll draw them off instead. Okafor, stay with me." 2 ships peeled away, executing a series of impossible maneuvers that would overwhelm their structural integrity almost as quickly as it confused the Martian targeting systems. It bought them perhaps 30 seconds before Martian fire found them. 0.9 ships remained. The Harbinger's energy readings spiked suddenly. Whatever weapon the massive ship carried, it was powering up faster than predicted. On Earth, automated systems detected the power surge and triggered emergency broadcasts. Across the hemisphere facing the Martian command ship, millions of people received a final warning to seek shelter, a hollow gesture, as no known shelter could withstand what was coming. "We're not going to make it," Maya whispered, watching the countdown timers. The brutal math was clear. The Harbinger would fire before the Archangels could reach deployment range. Jack saw it too. His tactical display showed the narrowing window, the increasing energy signature of the Harbinger, the remaining distance. They needed a miracle, or at least a desperate gamble. "Archangels, new plan," he transmitted. "Decision made. We're initiating Protocol Omega." In the command center, Alex's head snapped up. "Thompson, that's not authorized." But Jack had already cut communication with base. Protocol Omega was a theoretical last-ditch scenario, one deemed too risky to approve. It called for detonating the Archangel's enhanced fusion engines directly in the Harbinger's sensor path, creating a momentary blind spot through which the remaining ships might slip. It meant certain death for whoever triggered the detonation. "Archangels 2, 4, and 9, converge on my position," Jack ordered. The rest of you, maintain maximum distance and prepare to execute final approach the moment we create the opening. Kira watched in horror as 4 ships, including Jack's, broke formation and accelerated directly toward the Harbinger's forward sensors. They were flying straight into the mouth of the beast. "Jack, don't do this," she transmitted, protocol forgotten. His only response was a calm, "See you on the other side, Archangel 7. The Harbinger's weapon reached 95% charge. Its massive forward array began to glow with an unearthly light, like a sun being born in the void of space. The countdown to firing was now measured in seconds, not minutes. 4 Archangels streaked toward it on a collision course, engines pushing well beyond critical. 5 remained in reserve, carrying humanity's last hope in their composite hulls. The universe seemed to hold its breath. The 4 Archangels streaked toward the Harbinger, fusion engines glowing white-hot against the void of space. Jack's voice remained steady as he issued final commands. "On my mark, divert all power to engines, including life support. We need maximum yield." 3 acknowledgments followed, calm in the face of certain death. At Earth Defense Headquarters, Alex gripped the edge of the tactical console so hard knuckles turned white. "Get me comms back online." "They've locked us out," Rivera responded, fingers flying across her terminal. "Thompson's overridden the command protocols." On the main display, the Harbinger's energy signature reached critical levels. The massive ship's forward array now burned like a malevolent star, aimed directly at Earth's northern hemisphere. Secondary emissions suggested its shield strength had also increased, anticipating resistance. "They're about to fire," Dr. Patel whispered. "God help us all." In space, Jack's thumb hovered over the detonation sequence. 3, 2, a blinding flash erupted from behind the Harbinger. For a moment, everyone, human and Martian alike, froze in confusion. It wasn't Jack's Archangels detonating. It wasn't the Harbinger firing its weapon. This came from somewhere else entirely. "New contact," Maya shouted, her voice rising in disbelief. Massive energy signature emerging from Mars orbit. The tactical display shifted to show the red planet, now partially obscured by what appeared to be a massive portal tearing open space itself. Through this impossible breach emerged vessels, dozens of them, their design unlike anything seen from Earth or the Martian invaders. "What the hell?" Ethed, momentarily abandoning Protocol Omega as his sensors registered the new arrivals. The newcomers' ships were sleek and angular, gleaming with a strange bronze-gold alloy. They moved with impossible precision, accelerating at speeds that would crush human pilots. And they were heading directly toward Earth, specifically toward the Harbinger. At first, Alex and the command team feared they faced a second invasion. But when the first volley of weapons fire erupted from the newcomers' vessels, it was the Harbinger they targeted. The Martian command ship reeled under the assault, its firing sequence disrupted. The protective ring of Martian warships broke formation to intercept this unexpected threat, abandoning their pursuit of the Archangels. "This is Admiral Cheng Wei of the Mars Colonial Defense Force," came a transmission on all Earth frequencies. The voice was human, but filled with a confidence Earth's defenders hadn't felt in months. "Sorry we're late to the party." A stunned silence fell over Earth Defense Headquarters before Alex found words. Mars colony was destroyed. There were no survivors. "Not quite," Admiral Cheng responded. 2,000 colonists escaped underground during the initial attack. We've spent the last 6 months building, adapting, and waiting for the right moment. When the invaders moved most of their forces to Earth, we had our chance." On the tactical display, the Mars colonial vessels engaged the Martian warships with devastating effectiveness. Their weapons technology was clearly derived from the invaders, but modified in ways that specifically targeted known vulnerabilities. "How?" Dr. Patel asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "How did you develop this level of counter-technology?" "We had help," Admiral Cheng answered, his voice containing an edge of something complex, perhaps pride, perhaps unease. "The Martians aren't one unified species. They're a coalition of worlds controlled by military leadership. Not all of them agreed with the extinction strategy." The implication was clear. They had defectors. Jack, still commanding his suicide run, saw the opening this created. Archangels, adjust strategy. Protocol Omega is suspended. He paused, recalculating their approach with this new variable. Kira, you still have primary Phoenix deployment. Use this distraction to approach from Vector 16. The rest of you, form up and prepare to provide covering fire. The 5 remaining Archangels carrying Project Phoenix moved swiftly, adapting to this unexpected development. With the Harbinger's defensive ring engaged with the Mars colonial forces, a narrow path had opened. But the Martian command ship wasn't defeated, far from it. Its weapon array, though temporarily disrupted, was still charging. Its massive hull absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lesser vessels. And now its attention was split between 2 threats. The Harbinger is activating secondary weapons. Maya warned. Energy signatures show they're targeting the Mars colonial fleet. The colonial forces had brought surprise and advanced technology, but they were outnumbered. As the Harbinger's secondary arrays came online, colonial ships began to fall. Their golden hulls, so impressive at first appearance, cracked under sustained fire from the Martian flagship. "We can't hold them much longer," Admiral Chung transmitted. "Whatever you're planning, now's the time." In her Archangel, Kira pushed forward, the Project Phoenix device humming in her ship's cargo bay. The scientists had been clear. Optimal deployment range was half a kilometer from the main shield generator. Any farther and the effect would be too diffuse. Any closer and she'd be inside the Harbinger's point defense range, certain death before deployment. "I need coordinates for their primary shield generator," she transmitted to the colonial fleet. "Our intel might be outdated." "Sending now," Ching replied. A data packet arrived, containing not just coordinates but shield frequencies and rotation patterns, the kind of detailed intelligence only an insider could provide. As Kira adjusted her approach, something massive detached from the Harbinger's underside. At first, it appeared to be debris from the battle, but its movement was too deliberate. The object rotated, revealing a sleek craft smaller than the Harbinger but larger than any standard Martian warship. "New contact," Jack warned. "I think it's the Overseer," Dr. Patel finished, staring at the readings. "Their Supreme Commander is abandoning the Harbinger." A cold realization swept through the human forces. If the Martian leadership was evacuating, it meant one of 2 things. Either they considered the battle lost, or the Harbinger is going to self-destruct, Alex said, the tactical implications immediately clear. They're turning the entire ship into a weapon. New energy readings confirmed it. The command ship's power core was overloading, building toward a detonation that would not only destroy all nearby vessels but would create an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to devastate Earth's remaining infrastructure. "To abort mission," Jack ordered immediately. "Get to minimum safe distance." But Kira's voice came back steady, determined. "Negative. Project Phoenix deployment continues." Her Archangel accelerated toward the Harbinger, even as the colonial forces began to pull back and the escaping Overseer's craft disappeared into a smaller version of the space-tearing portal. "Lieutenant Chen, that's a direct order." Alex cut in, overriding the comm protocols. "With respect, Commander," Kira replied, her ship now close enough to make out individual features on the Harbinger's massive hull. "If that thing detonates, Project Phoenix is our only chance to contain the blast. The device doesn't just disrupt their shields, it affects all their quantum field technology, including their power core." Dr. Patel's eyes widened with understanding. "She's right. If deployed correctly, Phoenix might create a quantum dampening field. It wasn't designed for this, but theoretically, how close does she need to be?" Jack asked, already knowing the answer. "Inside," Dr. Patel said softly. "She needs to be inside the ship." Silence fell across all channels as the implications sank in. Kira would need to find a way inside the Harbinger, deploy the device directly at the power core, and she would never come back. "I can do this," Kira transmitted, her voice remarkably steady for someone who had just volunteered for certain death. "There's a breach in their hull from the colonial attack. I can navigate through it." Scans confirmed it. A jagged tear in the Harbinger's outer armor, barely wide enough for an archangel. Beyond it lay a maze of corridors and chambers, all designed by an alien intelligence. "You won't know your way to the core," Maya objected. "Actually, she will," came Admiral Cheng's voice. "Sending interior schematics now." Our allies provided them. As the data transferred, the Harbinger's self-destruct sequence accelerated. The massive ship began to emit pulses of energy that disrupted sensors and communications. Earth's REMA. Inning defense systems detected the building catastrophe and issued a final, hopeless warning to the population below. Kira studied the schematics, committing the path to memory. 4 minutes to reach the core. 2 minutes to deploy Phoenix. Cutting it close. Her attempt at humor fell flat against the weight of her sacrifice. Jack's voice broke the silence that followed. "Archangels, form up on Lieutenant Chin. We're going in with her." "Negative," Kira shot back. "One ship might make it through that breach. A formation would never fit." "We're not coming through the breach," Jack clarified. "We're making our own." Understanding dawned. Protocol Omega, the suicide run they had planned earlier, was back on the table. But instead of creating a sensor blind spot, they would use the Archangel's overloaded engines to blow a larger hole in the Harbinger's hull, giving Kira a clearer path to the core. As the remaining Archangels moved into position, the Harbinger's self-destruct countdown became visible on all human sensors, a final taunt from the Martian ship, broadcasting its imminent victory. 7 minutes until detonation. On Earth, millions looked up at the sky, unaware that their fate now rested on one pilot, one experimental device, and a desperate plan cobbled together in the final moments of humanity's darkest hour. "Archangels, final positions," Jack ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos of battle. "On my mark, divert all power to engines and prepare for detonation sequence." 4 acknowledgments followed, the last coordinated action of pilots who had trained together, fought together, and would now die together to give humanity its final chance. Kira watched their formation take shape against the backdrop of the Harbinger's massive hull. Her hands trembled slightly on the controls before she steadied them. The navigation path to the ship's core glowed on her display, a winding route through alien architecture with no guarantee of success. "We're in position," Jack reported. "Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The void of space erupted in blinding light as 4 Archangels simultaneously overloaded their fusion engines. The explosion tore through the Harbinger's already damaged hull, vaporizing a section of armor larger than a football field. When the light faded, a gaping wound had been opened in the massive ship, revealing the labyrinthine structure within. "Path clear," Maya confirmed from Earth Command, her voice tight with emotion. "Godspeed, Lieutenant Chin." Kira didn't hesitate. Her Archangel shot forward, crossing the distance to the Harbinger in seconds. The ship shuddered as she navigated through the newly created breach, scraping against twisted metal as she entered the alien vessel. Warning lights flashed across her console. The Archangel wasn't designed for this kind of maneuver, and damage was accumulating rapidly. "I'm inside," she reported, voice steady despite everything. Beginning interior navigation. The Harbinger's self-destruct timer continued its relentless countdown, 6 minutes remaining. Inside the Martian flagship, Kira found herself in a cavernous chamber that must have served as a hangar bay. The artificial gravity was fluctuating, causing debris to float momentarily before crashing down again. Emergency lights pulsed in an alien rhythm, bathing everything in a sickly green glow. Following the schematics provided by the colonial forces, she guided her damaged ship deeper into the vessel, navigating through corridors designed for craft much different from her own. Twice she was forced to blast through internal bulkheads that had sealed automatically during the attack. 5 minutes to detonation, came Rivera's voice from command. Harbinger's core temperature rising. At Earth Defense Headquarters, Alex watched Kira's life signs with growing concern. Her heart rate was elevated but steady, the calm of a pilot completely focused on the mission. Beside the commander, Dr. Patel worked frantically, adjusting the final parameters for Project Phoenix based on the new deployment scenario. "The device wasn't calibrated for this," she muttered, fingers flying across her tablet. "I'm sending updated activation sequences now, but she'll need to manually override the safety protocols. Send it, Alex ordered. Kira, did you copy that? You'll need to manually. I heard, Kira interrupted, her voice tight with concentration. Downloading new parameters now. On her display, the path to the core narrowed dangerously. The next section would require her to abandon the relative safety of her ship and continue on foot, a desperate gamble that the Martian atmosphere controls would maintain enough oxygen for her to survive. I've reached the inner chamber, she reported. Can't take the Archangel any further. Continuing on foot with the device. In the command center, Maya turned away, unable to watch the life support readings that told her what everyone already knew. Kira had just volunteered for certain death, even if she somehow managed to deploy the device successfully. The radiation near the core would be lethal within minutes. 4 minutes to detonation, Rivera announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Kira secured the Project Phoenix device to her environmental suit and unsealed her cockpit. The interior atmosphere of the Harbinger rushed in, breathable, but thin and cold. She pushed off from her seat, the reduced gravity allowing her to maneuver despite the bulky device strapped to her back. The corridors of the Harbinger were eerily empty. Most of the crew had either evacuated with the Overseer or been killed in the colonial attack. Those that remained were likely at battle stations far from the core. Still, Kira drew her sidearm as she navigated through the alien architecture, following holographic arrows projected by her wrist computer. 3 minutes. Came the update from Earth. Kira reached a massive circular door, the final barrier to the core chamber. The colonial schematics indicated an access code would be needed, but the system had been damaged in the battle. Sparks erupted from exposed circuitry. I can't get through the main entrance, she reported, scanning the surroundings frantically. Looking for an alternative. Her wrist computer highlighted a maintenance shaft, barely wide enough for a human, that ran alongside the main chamber. It would lead her close enough to the core, but not directly to it. She would need to find another way through once inside. 2 minutes, 30 seconds, Rivera's voice crackled through increasing interference. Kira wrenched open the access panel and squeezed into the shaft, dragging the Phoenix device behind her. The metal walls around her vibrated with the growing instability of the ship's core. As she crawled forward, the temperature rose dramatically. Her suit's cooling system struggled to compensate. The AT Earth command. All eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. The Harbinger's energy signature was now pulsing erratically, each surge stronger than the last. The Mars colonial fleet had withdrawn to a safer distance, though Admiral Cheng maintained position just close enough to keep communications open. She's reached the secondary chamber, Dr. Patel announced, tracking Kira's signal. But the core access is still sealed. 2 minutes, Rivera counted down. Inside the Harbinger, Kira emerged from the maintenance shaft into a circular chamber ringed with alien technology. Through a transparent barrier, she could see the ship's core, a swirling mass of energy contained within overlapping fields that pulsed with increasing frequency. Between her and the core stood a final barrier of exotic material. I can see the core, she reported, but I can't reach it. There's no way through this shielding. There has to be. Dr. Patel's voice rose with urgency. The Phoenix device needs direct line of sight to the core's quantum field generator. Kira scanned the chamber desperately, her suit's sensors searching for any weakness in the barrier. Nothing. 1 minute, 30 seconds, Rivera's voice wavered slightly. Then, incredibly, a new voice broke through the communications channel. A voice that spoke English with an unmistakably inhuman cadence. Human soldier, there is another way. A panel slid open on the far side of the chamber, revealing a Martian. The alien was tall and slender, its skin a pale blue-gray, eyes larger than human proportions set in a face with minimal features. It wore what appeared to be a technician's uniform, not battle armor. Who are you? Kira demanded, raising her sidearm instinctively. One who disagrees with extinction, the Martian replied simply. Your device, it will contain the detonation? If I can reach the core, yes. 1 minute, came Rivera's count. The Martian moved to a control panel and placed its 6-fingered hand on a scanner. I can lower the barrier, but only briefly. The system will detect the breach and attempt to compensate. Why help us? Kira asked, even as she readied the Phoenix device. Because genocide is not victory, the Martian answered, its large eyes blinking slowly. Some of us have argued this from the beginning. The Overseer would not listen. Without waiting for further discussion, the alien activated the panel. The barrier between Kira and the core shimmered, then disappeared. Now, the Martian urged. You have seconds before automatic systems restore it. Kira rushed forward, Phoenix device clutched against her chest. The heat near the core was intense enough to penetrate her suit. Warning indicators flashed across her helmet display. 30 seconds to detonation. With trembling hands, she activated the final sequence Dr. Patel had sent. The device hummed to life, its components shifting and realigning as it prepared to interface with the alien technology. 20 seconds. Project Phoenix is active, Kira reported, her voice strained. But I can't get a confirmation lock on the core's frequency. At Earth Command, Dr. Patel's face went pale. She needs to adjust the harmonic resonator manually. That means 10 seconds. I understand, Kira interrupted. Her hands moved to the device, opening the protective casing to expose the delicate components within. The radiation from the core washed over her in waves, overwhelming her suit's shielding. 5 seconds. With a final, deliberate movement, Kira adjusted the resonator and pressed her palm against the activation panel, using her own body to complete the circuit between the Phoenix device and the core. Device deployed, she whispered. A strange silence fell over all communications channels as the countdown reached 0. In the void of space, the Harbinger seemed to shudder, its massive hull distorting slightly as energy waves rippled outward from its core. Then, instead of the expected catastrophic explosion, a sphere of shimmering blue-white energy erupted from within the ship. It expanded rapidly, engulfing the Harbinger entirely before stabilizing into a perfect sphere. What's happening? Alex demanded, staring at the unprecedented readings on the tactical display. The Phoenix device, Dr. Patel breathed, her voice filled with wonder. It's created a quantum containment field. The detonation is happening, but inside a localized pocket of altered spacetime. On every screen, in every monitoring station across Earth's defense network, they watched as the Harbinger seemed to implode in slow motion, collapsing in on itself until nothing remained but a pulsing sphere of energy barely 100 meters across. Kira, Jack's voice broke the silence. While the other Archangels had been destroyed in the coordinated explosion, his ship had somehow survived, damaged but functional. Kira, do you copy? No response came from within the energy sphere. The containment field is stable, Dr. Patel reported, her voice trembling with emotion. The detonation force has been neutralized. Earth is safe. Throughout the command center, cheers erupted as the impossible truth sank in. They had won. The Harbinger was destroyed, its world-killing weapon contained, the immediate threat eliminated, but the celebration was tempered by the cost. Kira, Jack's team, and countless others had given their lives to secure this victory. As the remaining Martian vessels broke orbit, fleeing after their command structure collapsed, Admiral Chung transmitted from the Colonial Fleet. Earth Command, we've detected a small craft emerging from the Harbinger's remains. Unknown configuration. All eyes returned to the tactical display, where a tiny signature separated from the fading energy sphere. It was too small to be an Archangel, barely large enough for a single occupant. Get me visual, Alex ordered. The main screen shifted to show a grainy image, a Martian escape pod, modified with human technology, limping away from what remained of the Harbinger. This is Lieutenant Chin, came a weak voice over the communications channel. Requesting pickup. And maybe medical attention. Turns out Martians have escape pods too. Stunned silence gave way to renewed cheers across command. How? Dr. Patel asked, disbelief evident in her voice. The radiation levels alone should have. My new friend had some ideas about that, Kira responded, her voice fading in and out. Seems Martian medical technology is pretty impressive when they're not trying to kill you with it. As the colonial forces moved to recover Kira and her escape pod, sensors detected a quantum disturbance near Mars, similar to the portal the colonial fleet had emerged from, but smaller. The Overseer's ship was escaping beyond the solar system. "They'll be back, won't they?" Alex asked quietly, watching the disturbance fade from their sensors. "Probably," Admiral Chung acknowledged. "But not as conquerors next time. Not with what we've learned about their technology. Not with what we know about their divisions." Jack's damaged Archangel moved alongside the escape pod, providing escort as the colonial vessels approached. "Besides," he added, "next time we'll be ready. Earth and Mars together." As dawn broke over a world that had nearly ended, humanity began to consider something that had seemed impossible just hours before: a future. The Martian invasion had brought humanity to the brink of extinction, but it had also forced them to adapt, to innovate, and ultimately, to unite. And somewhere beyond the solar system, the Overseer's ship carried news of a species that refused to be conquered, a warning to any who might follow in their footsteps. Earth, against all odds, had survived. Mars had revealed allies where enemies were expected. And humanity, bloodied but unbroken, looked to the stars not with fear, but with newfound determination. The siege was over. The real journey was just beginning. 3 months after the destruction of the Harbinger, Earth was still healing. Cities lay in ruins, millions remained in emergency shelters, and the scars of invasion marked both the landscape and its people. But for the first time since the Martians appeared, construction cranes outnumbered defense batteries on the horizon. Humanity had begun to rebuild at the newly established Joint Earth-Mars Command Center, formerly Earth Defense Headquarters. Alex Chen stood before a wall of names, a memorial to those lost in humanity's darkest hour. The commander's fingers traced over familiar call signs: Rodriguez, Yamato, Okafor, and dozens more Archangel pilots who never returned. Each name represented not just a soldier, but a story cut short, a family left to mourn, a future unrealized. "They'd be proud of what we've accomplished," came Jack's voice from behind. The former squadron leader walked with a slight limp now, a permanent reminder of injuries sustained when his Archangel had been caught in the edge of the Harbinger's containment field. 3 months ago, we were fighting for survival. Today we're planning colonies." Alex nodded, turning away from the memorial wall. The Mars colonial fleet brought more than just weapons. Their agricultural technology alone has cut our food shortage projections in half. Together they walked through the command center, past workstations where Earth technicians worked alongside colonial specialists and even a few Martian defectors. The sight still struck Alex as surreal, humans and aliens collaborating where once they had fought to annihilate each other. "How many defectors now?" Jack asked, noting a blue-skinned figure hunched over a console, 6-fingered hands manipulating holographic controls with practiced ease. 87 confirmed, Alex replied. Most of them scientists or engineers who opposed the extinction directive from the beginning. According to them, nearly a third of their population disagreed with the Overseer's plans, but military discipline kept dissent in check. Jack's expression hardened slightly. "Not enough to prevent billions of deaths." "No," Alex agreed softly. "Not enough." They entered a conference room where Dr. Patel stood before a 3-dimensional projection of the solar system. Red markers indicated locations of remaining Martian outposts, mostly abandoned now, but still containing valuable technology. Blue markers showed human settlements and new defense installations. "Commander, Captain," Dr. Patel greeted them. "Perfect timing. We've just received the latest transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Network." The display shifted, focusing on the outer reaches of the solar system. A faint energy signature pulsed beyond Neptune's orbit. "The Overseer?" Alex asked, studying the readings. "We believe so," Dr. Patel confirmed. "The signature matches their portal technology. From what our Martian allies tell us, they're likely attempting to establish contact with their homeworld." "How much time does that give us?" Jack asked the question they were all thinking. "To prepare for potential reinforcements." Dr. Patel's expression was grim but determined. 2 years at minimum, perhaps as many as 5. Their nearest major outpost is several light-years away. "We'll be ready," Alex said with quiet certainty. Project Phoenix was just the beginning. Across the room, the door slid open to admit Lieutenant Kira Chin. Her recovery had been difficult. Even with Martian medical technology, radiation exposure had taken its toll. Her once dark hair was now streaked with white, and doctors had replaced her damaged left arm with a prosthetic of hybrid human-Martian design. Yet her eyes carried the same determination they had when she volunteered for what should have been a suicide mission. "Speaking of Phoenix," she said, catching the last of their conversation, "Admiral Chung just arrived from Mars Colony with the production prototypes. They've managed to miniaturize the quantum field disruptors to the point where we can mount them on standard fighters." The implications were significant. Project Phoenix, once a desperate final gambit, was becoming the foundation of Earth's new defense strategy. "And the Mars shipyards?" Alex asked. "Operating at full capacity," Kira reported. "The first 5 Archangel Mark 8s are complete. They've incorporated everything we learned from reverse engineering the Harbinger's remains." Jack managed a small smile. "Rodriguez would have loved to fly one of those." "Yes," Kira agreed softly. "He would have." A respectful silence fell over the room, acknowledgement of what had been lost to gain this future. The moment was interrupted by Rivera, now Communications Director for the Unified Command. "Commander, the Council is ready for your address." Alex nodded, straightening uniform lapels in an unconscious gesture. As Earth's highest-ranking surviving military officer, the commander had become the reluctant face of humanity's rebuilding efforts. Today marked the formal announcement of the Mars-Earth Alliance and the unveiling of plans for a joint deep space fleet. "Ready?" Jack asked. "As ready as anyone can be to tell the world we're preparing for another war while still burying the dead from the last one," Alex replied with grim honesty. They walked together to the broadcast center, a converted section of the headquarters now filled with communication equipment. A simple podium stood before a backdrop showing the new Alliance insignia, Earth and Mars together within a protective shield. Before stepping to the microphone, Alex paused, looking at the faces of those who had survived humanity's darkest hour. Jack, the pilot who had been ready to sacrifice everything. Kira, who had done the impossible. Dr. Patel, whose brilliant mind had given them a fighting chance. Rivera, whose steady presence had kept communications flowing in the chaos. And beyond them, countless others who had fought, suffered, and endured. "When I speak to them," Alex said quietly, "remind me to say that our strength was never in our weapons or technology." "Then what was it?" Rivera asked. Alex looked once more at the assembled team, then out the window where civilians and military personnel worked side by side to rebuild what had been destroyed. "It was this. The fact that when pushed to the edge of extinction, we didn't turn on each other. We stood together. Earth and Mars, human and alien. That's what the Overseer never understood, and it's why we'll be ready when they return." With that, Alex stepped forward to address a wounded but unbroken humanity, no longer defined by borders or backgrounds, but united by a shared survival and a common future among the stars. The Martian siege had ended. Humanity's next chapter had just begun.